Before we move on to our second panel, it is now my pleasure to welcome another person who plays such a fine role in our Congress. It is my pleasure to welcome Mike Quigley of the 5th District of Illinois and a member of the Congress. Hello and welcome.
Morning. Strong mic. Thank you so much for having me. I want to thank the American Islamic College for hosting this conference. I want to, in respect, recognize the Secretary. Thanks so much for being here and having me. I want to thank the college for being such an extraordinary resource, not just for the neighborhood, for the city and the region. With its educational programs, community outreach events, and exchange programs, the college is committed to breaking down barriers of misunderstanding that surround the Islamic faith. And I diverged a little bit from my remarks after listening to the previous speaker. I'm a Cub fan, and that makes me an optimist. I think you need to be an optimist because it's more effective when you look at the state of discrimination in our country. I've only been in D.C. for 2.5 years as a congressman. I took our mayor's place, Rahm Emanuel. I'm just glad he found a job. But what I've discovered is, unfortunately, an ideological war. Now, you may think it's a financial war, that we're battling over scarce resources. But folks, when you see what's happening, when you see people attempt to zero out NPR, or programs that deal with Planned Parenthood, or programs that deal with environmental regulation or choice, it's really an ideological war. What's worse is when the economy is in this state, people are angry, people are scared. The brave and the leader, I think, tries to unite, tries to draw us together. For after all, the strength of this country is its diversity. What you see, unfortunately, is those who create scapegoats, those who pit one group against the other. And the easiest way to do that, I think, is to pit your interest against those that are different than you, those that perhaps you don't understand or scare you. This is what I'm witnessing every day. Just this last summer, I was honored to join Congressman John Lewis, a civil rights legend. I mean, a man who was arrested 40 times in the 60s, who was beaten many times, most notoriously beginning this movement across the Pettus Bridge in Selma, where he and his group, and he was in front, walked across the bridge, and as they got to the top, they looked down, and there was a posse, right? People with clubs who weren't going to arrest them. They were going to beat them and try to kill them. So this last summer, we recreated that march. And when we got to the top of the bridge and we were looking down, there was no posse. But John Lewis, being such an extraordinary person, the entire group wanted to stand next to him, right? They were elbowing and jostling because they wanted to stand next to John Lewis. And I said, John, they weren't jostling to get next to you in 1965, were they? And he said, no, they just said, go ahead, John. That says something about where we have to go. It's not quite as dramatic, but we have to be brave enough, and we have to be strong enough and smart enough to fight those that would divide us and pit one group against another. Because as Dr. King said, in paraphrasing, discrimination against anyone or any faith is discrimination against all. But that arc of justice is tough, and we're going to have to address that. But as I said at the beginning, I have faith, right? I'm optimistic. I think this country will come out of this stronger than before. I believe that we'll recognize that there's more that binds us than divides us, and that we are a better country, unified, working together. But we recognize that's difficult. A wise man told me when I first got to D.C., the Bill of Rights is not self-executing. It takes work on a day-to-day basis. I'm honored to serve on the Judiciary Committee, and the forms of discrimination come in many forms, many shapes, and in many guises. You have my pledge to work with you to fight that. And I think it's appropriate for me to apologize on behalf of this country for the discrimination you've faced. So, we will get through this. We will be stronger, and the Cubs will win the World Series one of these days. Thank you. Have a great day.